Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Tim Hart, branch manager of VanDyk Mortgage here in Fort Myers, Florida. Welcome to an episode of the Heartbeat Show podcast. Today, don't know if a lot of you guys know it. If you're a close friend of mine, you do know it. I'm a diehard Florida Gator football fan, baseball as well, and basketball, Florida Gator fan. One of my favorite podcasts online, I'm freaking stoked, dude, by the way, is the Gators Breakdown with David Waters, and he has decided to come on and talk Florida Gator football. David, thanks for being with us, buddy.
Yeah, Tim, thanks for having me. This time of year, of course, heading into football season. Look, I can talk Gators football all the time anyway, but of course it gets ramped up when we hit, which would be normally the first week of football, but we got a little bit of time now. But yeah, plenty of time and effort goes into talking Gator football, but it's all fun.
So this year, I'm curious, let's start with the players, and then we'll get into kind of the schedule, maybe the team thing. So who do you have this year as far as like the breakout players? Who you really excited to watch this year?
I'm really excited. Offense, for whatever reason, just because he was a highly ranked recruit. He's going to have a time to shine now because of everybody. Florida lost that receiver from last year, but Trevon Grimes is kind of that guy everybody's picking, but I'm really looking at Jacob Copeland at wide receiver. I think he's very versatile. He can line up outside. He can line up in the slot if needs to be. He can take handoffs, which we've seen a little bit in Dan Mullen's offense. Jacob Copeland is the guy that I am really looking at as being that breakout guy, because you could kind of label Trevon Grimes as a guy who's kind of already broken out, not necessarily because he's on the level of what Freddie Swain and Van Jefferson and Josh Hammond were last year, but he's kind of already got that name recognition behind him, and he's proven a good bit more than Jacob Copeland has. So that's why I'll label Jacob Copeland to be that to be the guy on offense. And if I go to defense, probably Mahmoud Diabate really came on toward the end of last year. He got 3 sacks in the Vanderbilt game. One was a forced fumble that Jonathan Grenard picked up and returned for a touchdown. But they're going to move him a bit. He can play DN. He can play that rush in outside buck spot. He can now early on in camp is lining up at linebacker to get some more athleticism and coverage ability at that linebacker position. So really burst onto the scene last year as a true freshman. So this is his second full season, one of the smarter players on the team when you break it down and just kind of mental aspects of the game. So those two right there, I'm really expecting big things for 2020.
Have you heard anything about Brennan Cox? It's Brendan, right? Is it Brendan or Brenton?
Brenton. Yep.
Okay. What do you hear about him?
He's been a monster. I'm heavy into recruiting a good bit, and there's 5 stars. There's 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars, and how it's broken down. And from everything we've heard in camp, he's been just too much to handle and living up to a 5-star billing. So we got to see how that translates for sure into games. And when Florida, because we know Florida had some trouble on offensive line last year, so hopefully Brenton Cox is just not dominating a bad offensive line. Hopefully it's just him, elevating his game and performing well in practice because he is that good. But that has been the word in camp. Brenton Cox, the transfer from Georgia, has just really, really put it all together. And we talked to Todd Grantham this past week, the media on some Zoom press conferences, and he's like, look, he's done everything he's been asked to do. He's taken it upon himself to get better. And that was a knock, of course, from the Georgia side of things, as he wasn't really taking the game as serious. He was getting passed over on the depth chart, causing some trouble in Athens. So a lot of that, the Georgia side didn't expect him to come into Florida and really maybe do some big things. But according to Todd Grantham and some other coaches, he's done everything he's been asked to do to become an integral part of this Gators defense. So, look, we've seen from Todd Grantham these last 2 years, his first 2 years at Florida, you've had Ja'Kai Polite, you've had Jabari Zuniga, you've had Jonathan Grenard as guys that come in and just produce sacks and produce pressures on the quarterback over and over again. Brenton Cox looks to be that next one in line.
Yeah, and they got Moon on the other side of him. Is that right?
Yeah, well, Moon's probably going to play that more traditional Russian buck position. Right now, Cox is more the strong side defensive end, but they're interchangeable there. Especially Cox, he can line up at that buck spot too if they want to let him stand up and come off the edge in that fashion. So, I mean, Florida's not going to have an issue with pass rushers once again.
That's awesome, man. Several years. They've had that forever, so that's great stuff.
You know, of course, we know going back, got to get better in the bigger games. You know, they've 50 sacks last year, almost 49 sacks last year. Didn't sack Georgia one time. You know, so out of the 49 sacks, there was one game you didn't get any. The year before that,
did you get any against Burrow either? I don't think.
Right, yeah, exactly. None against Burrow. Go back to the year before. Fromm only was sacked once. So, last 2 years with a Todd Grantham defense, they've only got to the Georgia quarterback once. So it's got to be fixed. You know, you got the numbers, you got the pressure, you got the sacks. It's just got to get better in the big games.
So you guys know all these stats and stuff. Is 3rd and Grantham real?
It used to be, of course, it came back from his time at Georgia as a defensive coordinator. A lot of big plays were, 3rd and long, whatever, you should get a stop, and for whatever reason, it happens, and you give up a big 3rd down. Honestly, it's not. I forget. We've talked about it on Gators Breakdown. I forget the particular stat, but no, in recent years, going back to him being a defensive coordinator at Louisville, Mississippi State with Dan Mullen and stuff, overall, Todd Grantham's 3rd down defense is really good. It's just
it's crazy just, even labeled like that, though.
It's just a time and a place. But and that's the thing. You know, when everybody sees it, everybody's watching Florida Georgia. It's a top 10 matchup. You know, Florida's in the game, but you can't stop them on 3rd down.
Yeah.
And so it's just when it rears its head, when everybody's watching Florida, that's when it happens. And that's why he gets the label. So, but you go and watch Florida and Auburn. You go and watch Florida and South Carolina, Florida Vanderbilt. I mean, 3rd down defense is really, really good. It's just in the big games when the national stage is on, that's when it's got to pick up.
Was the Auburn, I'm curious, man, because last year, I don't get many live games, and I know you do your tailgating thing and stuff like that. Was Pyrine's touchdown in the Auburn game, for that moment still, when I see it on video, gives me like chills. He kind of breaks out and the crowd goes nuts, and then he really breaks out and the place just erupts. What's the coolest moment you think you've had in the swamp or watching on TV?
That's one of them. The one
that is one of them, you said?
Yeah, that one's one of them. The one I'll compare it to that's kind of recent history is the Antonio Callaway 4th and 14 touchdown against Tennessee.
From Greer?
Yeah, from Greer. That one where he is more of a kind of a inside route, and Brennan Powell hits
laid the block,
and it just springs Callaway down the sideline, and that eruption from that broken second tackle for Pyrie reminded me of the eruption of when Callaway catches the ball and Brandon Powell hits a block, and the crowd goes crazy. Of course, everybody remembers the Jarvis Moss 2 block kicks against South Carolina and the game winner at the end of that game. It was a pure moment. Yeah, the heave to cleave. I mean, those are the recent ones there, but ones that have kind of been similar and really back to back. Kind of Callaway in 2015, and then P. Ryan.
Yeah, in recent memory, right?
Yeah,
that's cool. Hey, so what about I'm curious, Emery Jones. So a lot of hype already, and deservedly so, with Kyle Trask. But what kind of playing time do you see for him?
Oh man, it's so hard to tell. Just you go and look at last year, and when you thought he would get in the game, he wouldn't be in the game. And
right.
When he would be in the game, you didn't think he'd be in the game. And when Felipe Franks went down last year versus Kentucky, I think it surprised a lot of people when Kyle Trask was the one that trotted out there as being the quarterback. It certainly surprised me. I'll fully admit now, I'll be honest. I wasn't a huge Kyle Trask guy. I thought to myself, there's a reason Felipe Franks is out there. There's a reason he's the starter. If things were going to work out the way they did, I didn't see the success Kyle Trask was going to have as a starting quarterback. And look, I don't claim to be right about everything, and I'm completely happy I was wrong about that.
No doubt.
Kyle Trask came out and really showed out. But at the same time, we were like wondering, what does that mean for Emery Jones at the same time? So you get there and he gets some playing time, and look, Kyle Trask goes down versus Auburn and what looked like an ugly injury at the time. And you're like, oh man, you feel sorry for Trask. He can't stay healthy. But let's go see what Emery Jones can do. And Florida, in a close game, needed some points, and that was kind of right before halftime. Emery Jones looked probably one of the best drives he's ever put together, leads to a Florida field goal. Throwing the ball with zip, throwing the ball over the middle, and reading the defense and making passes. And it was more than what we saw the rest of the season when he would just come in and it looked like you knew 95% chance he was just going to run the ball. And that's probably the biggest surprise, is that we just haven't seen more of his arm. And you go back to 2006 and how the quarterback rotation worked so well between Chris Leak and Tim Tebow. It was like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
You knew when Tim Tebow came in, it was going to work. And whenever he came in to even go back to LSU game that year in 2006, even when he was going to pass the ball, there was a lot of success there. For whatever reason, it just kind of seemed clunky with Emery Jones and the way they inserted him last year. So maybe with all the offseason COVID stuff last year, or this past season, you didn't get a full spring. You get a chance to watch a lot more tape of what kind of happened last year. Maybe the staff kind of identifies where Emery Jones can fit more. I think he gets better as well. I think his downfield passing can use a little bit of work as far as accuracy goes, and put some more balls on the money. But I think Florida's in good shape. If he has to play any extended amount of time, I think Florida can feel good about Emery Jones.
I agree.
And hopefully, we get to see him throw the ball a little bit more this year.
Yeah, I agree too. It was just so like, what about the I'm big. I have Twitter almost because of Florida Gator football. I really do.
Yep.
And there's other things too. But like one of the things going around Twitter last year was like to the transfer. Like he may leave if he doesn't get more playing time. Do you still hear that or no?
No, I really don't. Especially around the program, he's really happy there. He is a big Dan Mullen and Brian Johnson fan.
He is.
So he knows he's getting coached up. He knows he's getting coached up by the best. And look, you never can tell what the NCAA is going to do. Maybe if he knew for sure he could have transferred and played right away, maybe he would have. But you never know what the NCAA is going to do. So, look, this is going to be Kyle Trask last year. I know everybody. I know this is a free year and all that kind of stuff. He can really come back next year if he wants to. If he gets injured early in the season, maybe he does come back or whatever. But say everything goes like it's supposed to. This is Kyle Trask last year. Mm-hmm. Emery Jones is the guy next year. He could play 2 more years as well. With this free year basically coming up for college football. College football players get a free year now. So interesting dynamic. He wants to play. I think he'll play more. I think he wants to be the starter for at least one season, and that season will be next year to kind of show his worth and show as a starting quarterback. And I think we'll see how he performs next year, whether he'll stick around for 1 more year, because I'm telling you, Anthony Richardson, who's behind him, a Gainesville local, he may be the guy when it's all said and done. And we come back and look at Dan Mullen's tenure at Florida. We may look at Anthony Richardson. I don't want to get way ahead of myself, and I may be doing it here, but Anthony Richardson may be that key cog piece that we look at and said, you know what, that's for Dan Mullen as a head coach at Florida. There's his Tim Tebow. There's his Dak Prescott. And that's the kind of early returns on Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, I'm looking forward to, and you can tell Emery Jones will do an amazing job if he gets in, but AR or Anthony Richardson behind him, that's the freak. Like that seems like he's, like you said, he's going to be the guy, and that's one thing, man. It's been amazing, the QB recruiting under Mullen compared to like what we've been used to. Oh my God, as a fan.
And going through recruiting, I'm a big fan of signing a quarterback every year, because you just never know at that position, and especially the way everybody transfers now. But it is kind of odd. You're going into Dan Mullen's 3rd year, and you're still not on his quarterback. Kyle Trask is a Jim McElwain quarterback. He's a Jim McElwain recruited quarterback. And Dan Mullen's 3rd year, we are still going with a Jim McElwain quarterback. So, sometimes football doesn't go the way you think it will. And that's one storyline of it. When Dan Mullen was hired in 2018, I would have never believed you if you told me Kyle Trask was going to be his quarterback going into 2020. I just wouldn't have believed it there. So there's different ways to look at it, and we know the reasons it's happened. But I wouldn't have predicted that just a couple years ago. So, yeah, the quarterback room, great shape. Trask, Jones, Richardson, Del Rio on deck as well. Big name, Ja'Cory Brown for the next class as well from Valdosta. That's a guy that's probably my biggest target for quarterback coming up. So
is he committed already to UF?
No. I'm just saying that's as far as their target and who
gotcha,
I want to be in the class. That's who I'm looking at. So quarterback room will be in great shape for years to come.
All right. So speaking of the opposite, the running back room, like, what is what's the you're neck deep in recruiting. What is the deal with them not being able to recruit? And this isn't a slide on the running backs there. It's just, what are we going to go almost 2 years now with not signing a running back, right?
Yeah, a couple of different factors here. You go back, what is it, 2 cycles ago, you had Trey Sanders, who was an IMG. Florida took his brother as a JUCO player, I believe,
right.
And didn't really have much of an impact. Ends up going to Alabama. It's at that time, Dan Mullen was just getting started. It was probably going to be tough to pull a big-time running back, especially one that wants to go to Alabama. So, okay, you lost that one. And it was like, I remember at the time, hey, you lost Sanders, but there's this DeMarcus Bowman kid in Lakeland that, Florida's in great shape for. They go get him, they'll be just fine. Well, lo and behold, DeMarcus Bowman ends up at Clemson, another team that's competing for national championships. And a little bit more to the story there. His family wanted him to get out of the state of Florida and all that. So how much could Florida really, really do when that was the case? But there's been some other high-profile running backs that the staff just don't agree on. Greg Knox, who gets slammed a lot from Gator fans out there, the running back coach, as far as running back recruiting goes. There's been some guys he's been in line to get, and other coaches on the staff just aren't big on those same running backs. And Knox gets a whole lot of the blame, but, he's been overruled by Mullen and some other coaches on staff. So it's weird how recruiting works out sometimes. There's been some guys Mullen's been higher on. There's been some guys Knox has been higher on. They just, sometimes don't see eye to eye on that, and maybe some guys they could have had. So it's a weird dynamic when you look at it that way. One thing that helped, and Florida kind of just, once they got Lorenzo Lingard, the 5-star transfer from Miami, running back from Miami, that kind of, in their eyes, kind of helped some of the lack of recruiting from high school running backs. So they didn't see it as big of an issue as some of the fans did. So no doubt about it, though. This 2022 class. Yeah, 2021 class will be coming up. 2022 class, they got to get a running back. No doubt about it. If they can try and get one this class, this coming up 2021 class, all well and good. You can't go all the way to the 2022 class and not go get some type of big-time running back. And we haven't seen Urban Meyer with one yet, or Dan Mullen with one yet. Go back to Urban Meyer. He didn't have one at his time in Florida either. He had to put Percy Harvin in that role, Chris Rainey, Jeff Dents, but you didn't have that big-time 5-star running back that you could rely on. To me, just right now, the SEC's changed a bit. And if you can get that type of talent there, by all means, you need to go get it.
Yeah, and that was more like when his Tebow run was basically his running back almost, so like, but it is crazy. So like, that's what happens. Knox may like a guy and the other people shoot him down on it. So it's not, so do you blame Knox for the lack of running backs, or is it just is it a whole staff thing?
I'll say you could probably put most of the blame on him, but by a small margin. I mean, there has been guys who's been ready to commit to Florida that he likes, that the fan base likes, and Mullen says no.
Interesting. All right.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Well, hey, last thing on players. Who do you think will be a first-round pick next year besides Kyle Pitts? But you can still talk about Kyle Pitts.
Pitts for sure.
Top 5 for Pitts, or what do you think?
Nah. I mean, you'll have 2 quarterbacks go in the top 5, of course, with Fields and Lawrence.
Yeah,
so that takes away there.
I was just trying to catch you in one, I think.
He might can fit top 15. He might can be a top 15 pick if he can replicate what we saw last year. And defenses are going to be keying on him now, especially with all the receivers Florida lost. And he's going to be the returning pass catcher. If he can replicate what he did last year, he might can squeeze into a top 15 role. I mean, if Kyle Trask goes out there and throws for 3,000 yards in a 10-game SEC schedule, or what would be the equivalent to that, with a 10-game SEC schedule, he could easily sneak into the first round. Marco Wilson, who we've talked about with the coaching staff this week, he came back this year to raise his draft stock. And he's a versatile piece there. He can play corner, he can play nickel, and if he can go out there and prove one more time that he can play both positions and elevate his game another level, he could sneak into the first round. Another player that's under the radar who got a lot of love toward the end of last year, and we'll kind of see if he can put it together one more. So one more under the radar guy that maybe can fit into that first round to Daryl Slayton, defensive tackle for the Gators. He really just kind of looking at draft stuff last year, was a guy who scouts started to notice toward the end of last year. And so I think you got some more help around him with some pass rushers. And if Marlon Dunlap and Kyrie Campbell can kind of help him along the way, well, I think he's a player that can kind of maybe sneak in there with another kind of just dominant season.
Yeah, he's a big dude too.
Yeah,
Big guy.
Big. He's a big time recruit at one time too, and just hasn't necessarily lived up to that billing just yet. And you're starting to see him getting some notice now. So definitely a one player to kind of keep an eye on to see how much they can raise their draft stock, because it came on late last year.
So getting to the schedule, 10-game SEC schedule, no FSU, by the way.
Yep.
What games are you excited to see? What do you got kind of circled on your calendar?
Opening up at Ole Miss is big. Lane Kiffin's first game.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, noon game, and in the past, and I said this on the podcast this week, going out to one of those nooners in Mississippi has not been kind to the Gators in the past. And for the Gators going
was
to
the
the
game
90s.
at Tebow Law? No, that was in Gainesville, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah. But Ron Zook going to Mississippi State and his last year and getting beaten. Just those West noon trips have always been kind of tricky for the Gators. Always kind of a sleepy start. No excuse this year. It's the first game of the season in a season where it was questionable if we were going to have football at all. Everybody should be rearing to go, ready to go. I don't care if you were playing at 9 o'clock in the morning. You got to be ready to go for this first game of the season. So interesting that it's Lane Kiffin in his first game at Ole Miss. But a couple games after that, you got some back-to-back games versus Texas A&M and LSU. And those two games are going to be big for Florida. You come out of that 2-0, it sets you up really, really good going into the Georgia game just a few weeks later. And you go 1-1 in that. And, hey, it's desperation time. You can't lose to Georgia if you start with a loss before that. If your hopes are to go to Atlanta, and then the biggest thing, two more big things kind of late in the season is playing Felipe Franks in Arkansas the week after Georgia. So a neat little storyline there. Felipe Franks will return back to Gainesville with the reworked schedule. Arkansas was originally not on the schedule, but with an all-SEC game, that's now a reality. And the last two games of the season were supposed to be the first two SEC games of the season. Kentucky and Tennessee are the last two games of the season now, so a neat little storyline there. What was supposed to be your first two SEC games are now going to end the season, and Kentucky's a team. Kentucky and Tennessee are the two teams kind of picked behind Florida and Georgia. So, if they're going to beat Florida or Georgia, then it's going to be, especially if we're talking Florida here, it'll be late in the season for Florida. So what will Florida's season look like when they get to those two tough games to end the year? I think that's a pretty big question. And everybody kind of pointed to playing Tennessee again in December. If you go back to 2001 and how that game ended, with Florida had everything riding on that game, a national championship appearance, a SEC championship game appearance riding on a Tennessee game that was played in December because of September 11th. And now, with the pandemic and everything that's happening now, you play Tennessee again in December, and a lot different than when you normally play them usually in late September when it's still kind of hot. You may be going to Knoxville in December and it's kind of chilly in a different climate than you're used to playing Tennessee. And so some interesting aspects to the Florida schedule. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think they're going to end up? What's your record, Gator Dave?
Man.
Have you went on record yet with this?
I have not went on record yet with it.
I only put the pressure on you.
I am so torn between 9-1, 8-2. They're not going undefeated, and that's not a shot at Florida. I don't think anybody's going undefeated in the SEC with playing 10 games in a conference. I mean, it's going to be so tough to go undefeated. And look, it's tough to go undefeated anyway.
Yeah,
we know we haven't seen an undefeated Florida team. You go and look at the recent Alabama dynasty with Nick Saban. He's only had one undefeated national championship team. That's how hard it is to go undefeated. It's so, yes, I know the games got reduced by 12 to 10, but these are, instead of 8 SEC games or 9 SEC games, you're playing 10 SEC games. The schedule got harder by adding Texas A&M and Arkansas. And it's not that you look at those two teams singularly. You look at them when you got to play them. Like I said, you got to play A&M and LSU back to back.
Right.
And you play Arkansas the week after you play Georgia. So the schedule did get tougher. I lean more 8-2 than 9-1. And once again, not a slight. I still think that gets Florida in Atlanta. I still
So
think
you
that.
you think they're going to win the East?
I still think they win the East. I still think, even with 2 losses, I think Florida beats Georgia. I'll go on record and say that. I do think Florida. That was before Jamie Newman opted out and all that kind of stuff. I think this is Florida's year to get Georgia. So
Is he really? Did he really opt out for the draft though? I mean, is that what went down, or was it like? Do you know?
You hear, not as close to the Georgia program. I have a lot of Georgia buddies. I grew up in Georgia. He says, Newman says COVID was the reason. There was a pure quarterback competition going on between him and JT Daniels and DeJuan Mathis as well. It could have been a little bit of a speculation here. He could have started the season, but he could have seen the way the other guys were competing with him, and maybe he wouldn't have been the quarterback to finish the season.
Right, writing was on the wall for him, maybe.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I wasn't that high on him to begin with. I know Pro Football Focus and a lot of other people were so high on him, and we're looking at metrics and advanced metrics for what he did at Wake Forest and how that would translate to him playing with a lot better talent around him at Georgia. I didn't see it. It was going to have to be a prove it moment for me with there. I was trying to take the bias out of it. I still just didn't see it. It was going to rely so much on the deep ball, and I just don't know how that would work in the SEC with a lack of spring practice, a lack of the new coaching staff, trying to figure all that out while, so many different questions on Georgia's team with coaching staff changes and offensive line and running back and limited wide receivers are returning as well. So it was just, I think, a lot of things for me in combination of looking at Jamie Newman in Georgia, why I just didn't see a whole lot of success for him.
Who do you have winning the West? Bama?
I got Bama. LSU is just taking a hit way too much. All the opt-outs and everything that they had already lost anyway with the draft and coaching staff changes and all that. And that they're nowhere near the same team as that was playing Clemson in the national championship game. And you don't lose that much in the SEC. And to begin with, even before Jamar Chase opts out, you don't lose that much in the SEC and turn around and have the same success. So I was going to pick Alabama anyway. But yeah, I got Florida and Alabama in Atlanta.
Who do you got winning that? Do you know?
If I had to go on record right now, I'd probably pick Alabama. Just too much talent top to bottom. Kyle Trask would absolutely have to play the best game of his life because, to me, he is the best quarterback in the SEC. But right behind him, I think, is Mac Jones at Alabama with a lot that's going on there and the playmakers that they have. I think if they met in Atlanta, I would probably end up picking Alabama.
Gotcha. Well, hey, man, I appreciate your time, Dave. And I want to make sure if any Florida Gator football fans that I know, they connect with you out there. And I know you're big on Twitter and you got a Facebook account as well. And, the one thing I didn't mention in the beginning is you just reached a milestone for your podcast, right? 2 million listens?
Yep, 2 million overall listens. Started the podcast back in August 2016. So, from about 4 years, took it to about 2 million listens. So, thanks to everybody who's out there and has checked it out. And if not, check it out. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. You can find the podcast on all the major podcast platforms out there, video version on YouTube as well. So a lot of content out there coming up for the football season. Yeah.
And Dave, man, you do a great, I told you off the air, was great job, and you put out great content. We're all fanboys here, but you also call it pretty straight too, I think. And always enjoyed it, man, and I appreciate it. And it's a show that I listen to my kids too sometimes. So
family friendly.
A little family friendly. Yeah. My boy Silk, I gotta watch it with him, man. I have the mute button ready, listening to him on the Big 3 roll up. But hey, if you guys are watching this far, man, subscribe to Dave's podcast. Gators Breakdown does an awesome job. If I can help you with anything in Southwest Florida, mortgage related, let me know, or anywhere in Florida, give me a call. Always happy to help you. Connect with me on Facebook, social, Twitter, LinkedIn, all those fun things. And make sure you subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, Facebook. It's everywhere. And Dave, again, man, appreciate you, bro.
Hey, Tim, thanks for having me.
Hey, enjoy your season, man. Don't work too hard, dudes. I know you're going to be a busy dude coming up. All right, take care, bud.
Thanks.
See you, bye.